Hi. Hello. Good evening. Do I think they will release my colors? I mean, tenebrous teal? I will say eventually. That's my answer. Yes, eventually. Kicking stuff. All right. So, today I got all my gold colors again. I don't remember what the exact colors were because it doesn't matter. I'm just going to go with it. So, let's work on some more golem. Not the shield. I gotta finish the greaves and the vambraces and his skirt thing. So we're gonna try and get maybe the base also, and then the shield will be either in 2 weeks, because next week I'm going to work on a figure for Torbjorn Barone. But Robocop. We'll try and get most of the figure done today. Yes, box art. It's a academic bust. I guess I can show it since he gave me the link. I'll try and find it at some point, but this is the bust by Torbjorn that I'll be painting next week. I'll probably finish it in a night. Or I'll do most of it on stream and then... But, yep. So, yeah, he's releasing a set of like academic busts and stuff on Kickstarter. Hi, Minimancer. So the story with those, the Torbjorn bust, is that he like sculpted that one for fun, and I was like, hey, this would make a pretty good like academic bust. He wasn't even planning on releasing it. It was just like, I made this thing. And then he kind of made another one. Like we got talking at Adepticon about like, hey, there's some, you know, it would be cool to have a bust for doing like teaching non-metallic on or whatever. So he made one that's just like a female knight that's in mostly armor. Then, yeah, it kind of became like here's a Kickstarter of just good academic figures. Hola, Joaquin. All right, so I think most of you guys have the idea at this point, but I'm just trying to get an initial value sketch of where the reflections on his embroidery would go. based on the cloth and the lights on the chest, know that the main reflection point is going to be around here. And then we can create intermediate values from there. So I'm going to just quickly establish the main reflection and then work my way around. So I have kind of two sides to it. So this is the main light side, and then I have the cooler side. On the cool side, I'm going to grab some of this olive drab and some yellow, some light yellow. While I'm doing the belt, I'll go ahead and just place in a bit of reflection on the back side. So we still have to do the back of the armor. Something like that. So I want a good, I want a pretty large main light here. And then the brightest reflection will be like a smaller point light. Something like that. And then if I want to create a little more interest, I can put in these smaller kind of intermediate secondary gradients, and I'll tone those down. I never want these to be as bright as my main one, so I'll have to go back and reduce that brightness, but it's fine for sketching. Cool. Now, the other side, push this a little more. It's like metallic-y. Yeah. Like a gold embroidery. So the big one's going to be, the big thing is going to be getting all these little tassels, all these small little strands to look metallic. It's not like don't know what, I forget what it's called, but basically, yeah, like a gold thread. I'm sure there's a specific name for this kind of thing. So similar to the hair, I'm interested in like the major sections of these little tassels. So you see I can kind of separate them into little segmentations. And then with the final lights, I can individually refine them. Hi, Sean. Hi, Wendy. Okay. Now, right, see? So that reflection point follows this line, right? You can see if you place something vertical on the figure, it all follows. Highlight, 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 right? So it's this line that all follows the same, that same lighting scheme. All about consistency of placement. Now the problem with these little tassels is each one of them is a cylinder, is a tiny little cylinder. So what we want is each one would have its own little highlight, but we want more light in general closer to the main reflection point. And if we have to, we can grab some of the gold. We can come back in and apply it as a wash to restore some of the color and add some definition back in between. We keep doing that until we get it to a point where they're all well defined and individualed. Okay, so I'm painting the dark line now. The dark line might seem kind of thick at this time. The reason I'm doing the dark line first is because in little areas like that where I got too thick, I'm going to do the edge with light, and it'll overlap the dark line and make the dark line really thin, just to give enough that you get that nice separation between the two. Ruatras Miniatures? Hello, thanks for the raid. Welcome in, everyone. How you doing? What were we doing? What were we working on? I am working on this Achilles from Epica Miniatures. Epica Tales. is it? Ruatyrus. Weird. That rated twice. Bizarre. Welcome again to the other two people. Okay, so easy. So I painted the dark line, right? I got to clean up that little bit of yellow that's... I can't tell if he's supposed to have like a double lip on the... on it or not, but... High overrated, high pH, D80D. Okay, so I'm gonna make it so that that isn't a second little thing, because it would be so tiny. So I'm gonna come back with the red, right? Fill that in. Try to make that dark line very thin. Oh man. My readers. Okay, now let me try and get this adjusted so you guys can see it. Right, so I've got that. Now I want to paint this top line, this top edge highlight. As thin as possible. So you get the two very sharp edges, right? Yeah, that was the Cartacci red. It was just, I don't even know if that's the red I used on the thing originally, probably, but it was just close enough to paint that thin line. Right. So you get that nice separation. No. I mean, you could just open it and, give it a good stir. Use the back of an old paintbrush and get it down in there and stir it up. Knock that thing loose. Okay. Something like that. Create these little kind of micro folds. secondary reflections in the fabric. Hi, Ruatyrus. How are you? What were you doing? What were you painting? Or working on? I guess you didn't have to be painting. Thanks. No, the black, gold 79, yellow ochre, German yellow, ivory, moon yellow, and orange. I don't remember. Orange fire, and U.S. olive drab. So, name's not super important, right? Again, it's like a yellowish orange. I know a yellow with yellow ochre has nice coverage. And then like a yellow, brighter yellow. You're going to be counting for a while. Hopefully next year. Which city do you live in? Madrid? Well, I'm definitely coming to Madrid. Oh. Next to Big Child Creatives Workshop. I've been there. I know where that is. Is Masculine's the only one in Barcelona? Yes, he's the only person who lives in Barcelona. No, he's not the only. If you're, I mean, Hironi is in the same studio as him, so. Doinks. Hi, Doinks. Next year, I hope to do a workshop in Madrid and Valencia. Let's see. Barcelona. Hi, Reedy. Thanks for the tier 1. Appreciate it. Do I use the same mini in every class? No. No, well, if you mean like the same workshop, no, I have a few I like. But I also offer, I've only taught one specific workshop that's like a generalist workshop, but I could do a whole 2-day workshop on non-metallic. I could do a more ambient workshop. It's up to the people. Atlanta is going to be a bit generalist, but a little, because you guys had a class with Mark and got a lot of stuff on like texture and skin. It's going to probably focus a little heavier on ambience because if there's going to be a lot of the same attendees, there's probably a lot of things you learned from Mark already that would overlap quite a bit. I don't need to teach you how to do leather when Mark already taught you how to do that. What is blinking? Is it the palette that's flashing black every so often? The palette camera, the one doing that?
You did headbutt it.
I did headbutt it when I was trying to plug the thing in. Let's see if that... It was driving me nuts. I kept seeing it out of the corner of my eye. Thanks. What am I wearing? The Black Knight? Maybe the coolest Kingdom Death monster. I have 3 Kingdom Death shirts, and I don't always pay attention to which one I'm actually wearing. Okay. Hi, Mo's Magic. It's going well. Trying to get through some of this guy, some of the more small detail parts. I think today we can get him pretty dang close to done, other than the shield. It's going to be a lot of just refinement work, little painting little lines and things, putting in some extra shadows here and there. So that's pretty close, at least on this side. Right, I still got to do a lot of the back. Some parts on the front that need to be fixed, or on the chest plate, is to still go around, do some of these smaller lines and dots. Really all I got to do here is just pop in a few highlights. They might not be like physically accurate to how the metal would reflect, but they help create definition in these parts. Which is what we're looking for. Always searching for definition. The weekend went well. Will came over, we hung out, we played some games of Kill Team. We got 3 full boards of Into the Dark terrain painted. We ate delicious crab cakes and what else? Hamburgers and chicken. Yeah. Grilled a bunch. Barbecue, painting, and tabletop games. It was a pretty good weekend. Can't complain. And I knew Will's family owned like a pretty famous seafood restaurant in Baltimore. But holy shit, those were the best crab cakes I've ever had. No crab chips. I live in a pretty seafood heavy town, and they made us look bad.
Mm-hmm.
You just throw that shit down.
Some dominoes. No, yeah.
Space Marine dominoes. Okay. Give me a rough sketch for that. Now, I need to think about the legs, right? So this leg, right, we're following the line all the way down. So here, I'm going to go ahead and just mark them out. Basically where our lights are going to be. Right, so this is very cylindrical. So essentially our light's going to run like this. Favoring this side a little bit more. Then kind of up there on the knee pan. And then this leg is all angled downwards, so the whole, it'll follow this reflection, right? So all of this is going to be very orange. Makes sense. And then the bottom of this knee pan, I'm going to grab just a little bit of the red. Right. So that knee pad, we'll get the orange from the ground, and then maybe we'll get like one little bit of orange reflection on this side. So here, it's so small. I often find, yes, you might get a bit of the foot reflected like in this small section here of the shin guard, but depending on how you turn it, it would change. So I prefer to just think about the environmental reflection instead of trying to reflect any like extreme like elements on the figure. And then on the back side, we get some of the sky reflection on the edge. I think it works from more angles and is a bit more convincing if you do the like sense of how it would reflect instead of trying to think about like the exact true reflection you might get, because the true reflection only works from one angle, where what's the word I'm looking for? obfuscated, like abstract reflection can work from multiple angles. Okay, so we get the kind of sense of how those work. See, so now when I turn it this way, right? This, if I turn it this way, this here would no longer reflect his foot. It would be reflecting the stuff back here. So this reflection still works as a ground reflection from this direction. Same if I turn it. Well, if you turn it this way, you can't even see it at all. So the angles I really have to think about are from here to here. And a foot reflection would only make sense right here. It would stop working from here over. Thanks, Joaquin. It's all about getting the, and you can see if I zoom in, like, this is like, I don't know, 7 brush strokes or something. And it looks like a mess, but when you zoom out, all the way out, it gives you the sense of the reflection, right? So that's why I say it's really important to get that sketch in first to make sure the lighting direction and everything is working properly. Then you can go in and refine. All right. I'm going to take a quick break for a second, and then I'll come back and probably start refining the shin guards and work on some other parts, and then maybe start work on the back some more. Still got to do these leather straps and the sword, but cool. All right, I'll be back in a couple minutes. I'm gonna jump into something else real quick. We're gonna take a bunch of this orange. And we're gonna grab, we'll grab the yellow ochre again. I'm gonna keep them separate for now, just because I've got kind of my, this is gonna take a lot of paint. And we're going to grab a not so great paintbrush, an old guy. Yeah, we're gonna sketch some color on the base. I'm gonna get a big So we want a nice yellowish tone with some orange in the, what's it called? But I'm just going to go around, kind of stipple it on. And while it's still wet, I can grab some slight variation in tone. Now there is going to be a cast shadow from him on the base, but that'll come, I'll paint that in after. Right now I just want to get some of the color down. So I know the light's coming from this way, right? So anywhere on this facing of the rock is going to be in light. So even though I've got some shadow down here, I know that the light comes from this way, right? So all of this back here will be in light. And then as like comes across, so the light's this way, right? So I've got to kind of angle this to make sense. And I can use the camera actually as my guide, right? So if I can see it on camera, then I know, like I'm not even looking at the model. I can use the camera to see where the light hits and where it wouldn't. Now, not everybody's going to have a setup like this, so you'd want to take like a reference photo. Adiós. Buenas noches. Okay, something like such. Now, grab some of this darker tone, just a little, not too, I don't want too much black. Something like that. Give myself like a dark reddish brown. That means all of this back here, it's all in shadow. I'm actually grab just a little bit of the green to kind of desaturate it some. I don't want it too saturated. Okay, so you can see that's sort of the shadow there. And then we can look and see that this shadow extends out a little bit. Something like that. And I can always adjust the shape. All right, so I can find the shape that I want. I know he's like here. I want that foot to be in shadow. Which means that right here is going to be where the sword is. Okay, get ourselves lined up again. Right, I want his foot, that back foot, to be in shadow. So something like right here, and I can look and see that this is a little, comes out a little too far. And then this right here. So I just adjust it. Get it to the right shape. And I have the kind of rough shadow of the rock. The nice thing about this angle, one nice thing anyways, is that I don't have to worry about the shield, what the shield's going to do to the shadow. Because I know the shield goes like right here, which would then cast all on the table itself. Okay. So there. And I can see none of this back here, so all of this is in shadow. this needs to curve a little more. That came out a little too far. And then getting the sword arm right. Okay, so the sword is like right here. Then it extends up like this. And then it cuts back in. And then we just have to connect the shadow from the top of the rock to the bottom. Right? Now, get the leg right. So this comes out a little bit, comes back towards the ankle. And now I'm going to switch to a slightly bigger or smaller brush so I can paint this a little more refined. Because we're going to get the shadow from the foot. And his calf. And the calf muscle cuts out a little like that. And there you get his knee. So this actually comes down a little more. Like, can I even see that small rock, right? I can look at that angle, right? Let's find the angle again. So there's the angle. Can I even see that small rock? No. So this here, I can place a mark. No, I can't see that. Can I see that? No. So this would come out and around this small rock. And then cut back to, I'm looking for landmarks on the base, right? So I'm looking at the base, trying to see where things line up, and it kind of cuts to right here. Buenas noches. Hola, Gata Carmi. ¿Qué tal? Hi, David. All right, so when it's like that, we can see the cast shadow, right? Because it goes like such. Okay. Easy enough. Ciao, Ali. What's up? So, I've got the rough sketch right. Depending on the light, how bright the ground is going to be, will adjust the temperature of not temperature, but the value of the ground shadows. They might be a little lighter or darker depending on ambient light. So once I've got my light value set, I can then figure out what I want, how much ambient light I want there to be. And I can brighten or darken the cast shadow based on that. What I'm going to do though, is I want some of that orange in there. I like that orange feeling. So I'm going to just like glaze / wash some of this orange onto the base. And I can also always airbrush a layer of that on top. Once I've got everything where I want it to be, I can make adjustments, filter some color on top of the airbrush if I want. Okay. So I would say right now, looking at it, even at this value, that the shadows on the cast shadows are too dark, right? I don't need that extreme of a contrast to show that they're cast shadows. So I'm going to come in and I'm just going to brighten the cast shadows up a little bit. Finding that relative value difference, the level of ambient light in the scene, is really key to making a convincing cast shadow. Right? It's a sunny day. The shadows are not going to be like pure black. The only place you might get like really dark shadows are on the backside here, in like some of the cracks of the rocks. all that sand nice and bright. Cool. Now, I do need to get some of these like some of this shadow tone elsewhere in the base, right? So like around some of the larger rocks and a little of the recesses. So we'll do like a wash basically with a bit of this shadow color, and this is gonna help like unify some of the base. I don't need it too much. As long as I can see the line where I painted the cast shadow, it's easy enough for me to come back in and redefine that line. Cool. Give you a rough idea of the lighting on the back. Okay. Now, Get the shape of his tunic well defined again. I just noticed a little thing. So he's got a little piece of his tunic that comes kind of out, and the other part doesn't. Right, so you can see like here, his tunic kind of comes out a tiny bit and then sort of cuts back in. We can make that shape. Cool. Add some shadows around the rocks back here. Nice. All right. Okay. Now with just some stippling, I can start to add a bit of volume. Because there's like some ripples to the base, right? It depends on your lighting scheme, right? So the question for people watching later, for cast shadows, is important to drop saturation as well as value. That really depends, because sometimes you could have a lighting condition where you have like more saturated shadows versus desaturated lights. So it really depends on what the ambience of the rest of the scene is. Right? Generally, shadows are more desaturated, but that doesn't always necessarily have to be true. Right? If you were doing maybe like a moonlight scene, maybe the lights are like a cool desaturated blue, and then you might have more rich saturated shadows. So like most answers, the answer is it depends. Generally, for a sunny scene, yes, you want more desaturated shadows. But I do not speak in absolutes, so there are situations where you might want more saturated shadows and desaturated lights. But that is always the case when talking about anything painting. It always depends Okay, so you have that. Now, there's something called like the penumbra. That is where, because the sun is like is huge, you don't get like perfectly crisp shadows. And a lot of times you will get like an extremely saturated transition point between the shadow and the cast shadow and the area light. Now the shadow becomes sharper the closer it is in proximity. So like by his foot, the shadow would be very sharp. And then back here where it starts to like go away from him, you get a bit of a softer shadow. It's not a lot, but like I'm going to just use some of this orange to soften the edge slightly and get that warm transition point between the two. Especially on something like sand where you've got all these like micro shadows that you would get from like the individual sand grains can really soften the shadow also. So like back here, maybe I want this shadow to be a little softer. Where up by his foot, right? Zoom in. Maybe this shadow is like extremely sharp. Now, the other thing you have is what's called occlusion shadows. So occlusion shadows are areas where ambient light can't really reach. So things like around his foot, where it's like pressed into the sand, that's where you get like the super black shadows, because the ambient light cannot reach there. And you get these really strong deep shadows. So like underneath this foot, right? Even though there's no direct sunlight here, his foot, where it's lifted, would create a soft, very dark shadow underneath it, because no ambient light is effectively bounce light. Whether it's bouncing off of the sky or anything else in the environment. You get these very dark occluded shadows in areas like underneath his feet, where that bounce light cannot get to. For example, right? This is an occlusion shadow, right? My arm, the underside of my arm, and it's kind of hard to see because, like, right? Look at my. Let me switch cameras. Okay, so you have. I'm trying to see how I can do this, right? So you can see the cast shadow. You can see the cast shadow from the sleeve of my shirt, right? Look how when it gets closer to the top, like up here, up at the top of the sleeve, right? The shadow is actually darker than at the bottom, right? Because the proximity of the shirt to my arm, you can't get the bounce light from the floor, doesn't come up and get there, so that the cast shadow is actually slightly darker. Is that clear? Does that make sense to everyone? I hope so. I'm going to grab a little of this gold color just because it's like a nice, rich kind of yellow. I'm going to create a wash with that just to pull some more yellow into the base. And I can always knock it back down, but I want that sandy, that warm yellow sand kind of vibe. And then I can take the brush where I don't want as much of it, and while the wash is still kind of wet, just like pull it around, lift a little bit where I don't want as much. I can kind of tap it with my finger, pull some of that off. because I want to get that feeling why that orange reflection, right, is in his armor. So I need to have some of that orange in the base. Where is it? And while this is still wet, I can grab, right? Washes and stuff are for noobs. Yeah, they're super useful. They're good. They have their uses. Right? Look how intense that is. So I can just place a little of that on the base. And while it's still wet, I can kind of pull it around to where I want it. And I can create a really fast gradient on the, I wouldn't even call it like like this is not a natural shadow, right? This shadow would make no sense being here. The shadow that goes across, right? I'm not so much creating like what would be like a true shadow. I'm more creating like a vignette, like you would do on photography, to sort of pull more light towards the direction I want. Right? This is not realistic. It's more for a stylistic effect where I want an almost sort of spotlight effect by the front foot to kind of draw your attention towards that. You know, I understand what you're saying with this shadow. But being perfectly physically accurate is not always the goal, right? Sometimes the goal can be to inform the viewer more what it is than actually try and be 100% physically accurate, right? Because if we make it too soft, then it might confuse the viewer as to what that line is. Where if I make it kind of sharp, it's very clear that that's the shadow of the sword. Does that make sense? We can try and emulate physics on our figures and our paintings, but sometimes trying to be hyper realistic is not always the best for making an effect, right? We're just trying to create like visual representation of something. Sometimes a more simplified effect can convey what's going on better than like a perfect representation. I think that's a little too bright. Even though the shadow would go here, I'm going to have the light cut across that rock just a little bit. So it's clear that like that shadow is going across the rock as opposed to having it like perfectly line up with the rock. Even though if I go like this, right, it might like just happen to perfectly line up with that rock. But by having it cut across the rock just the tiniest bit, it shows that there's like a cast shadow across the rock instead of being like exactly at the edge, which could look a little bizarre. Because I'll tell you, no one's going right we're supposed to look at the figure like this, okay? No one's going to pick up your figure and go like, oh, let me see if that thing goes right there. Oh, that's not right. It doesn't go like that. Like, nobody's gonna do that. At least I hope they wouldn't. I don't know, Alessandro might. I wouldn't even do that as a judge. Okay, so now we have a nice contrast between the two. I'm going to grab a little more of this green. Natalia definitely would. Hi, Rooster's Rhythm. Yeah, so I'm gonna grab just a touch more of the green and like some of these areas back here. I'm gonna create just a bit more contrast. We can use, even though this is I'm lowering the value contrast, the contrast between the orange and the desaturated green still makes plenty. See how we get that super saturated line that separates the cast shadow. This is to get some of that sky blue kind of into the ground. Now we don't want that on the bottom side, right? Because that's all reflecting ground. This is sort of an ambient light from the sky. Like that would not show up underneath here. I watched the crystal brush judging, or crystal crimson brush. Dave Caldwell was the good cop. Right, and it didn't really affect the color that much. You 100% should paint the back of your model if you're entering a painting competition. Unless it's got a huge backdrop where you can't even see it. Paint the back. Now I'm probably a little more lax than others where I will let some things slide on the back. Like if you painted the back like more dark, like this than the front when there's like a very clear, like if there's less contrast on the back because it's in shadow, when you have a very strong light source, I would be fine with that. Some others would be like, no, you have to find a way to create definition and contrast on the back also. It's like, yeah, but the back's in shadow and it's not as important. Like, I don't paint backdrops that often, though. I'm not a big backdrop guy. I don't mind them. I probably don't paint backdrops that often because I'm often painting box arts, and unless you're big child, they don't really tend to want backdrops on their figures. That's the, not Blood Elf, that's War. Which I'll show you guys in just a minute when I go to take a smoke break. But it's on the Be Back splash screen. No, I don't. I will say I have a box art. This is not a spoiler. Well, I'm not explicitly spoiling anything because I'm not going to say who it's for. But I do have a figure coming up, a box art coming up that I have to paint that comes with a backdrop. It will not be on stream. I will spoil so much as to say that it comes with like an embossed backdrop, kind of like a flat, right? Like how flat figures are. It's a full figure that comes with like a resin backdrop. And that's as much as I'll say about that. But if you want to see cool backdrops on figures, check out 2A Kai or Ruben Martinez. Those are the two guys that I think probably do the coolest backdrops. I don't even think I would teach a class on it. I'm no expert on painting backdrops. Yeah, Sergio Vices does some cool ones. Is it the like dinosaur guy? Emperor Kroll. Hello. Do you still have the Blame Bloodhoof model? Yeah, he's right. He's right there. Boop, boop. Right there. Tue Kai, and Ruben Martinez. Gotta stop giving away. Hey, this is a problem with streaming. I just give away all the information. The difference in the class, though, is you get to paint a backdrop and I get to fix your mistakes while you're there. J. Vicente Perez. Hello. No, 2A is really bad at Instagram. So, one thing I want to talk about, right? We know that the leather has to be the sand, right? If we were to make this black and white, that the sand would be roughly the same value as the skin, correct? So what does that mean for the tone of his skin, right? In the shadows. And what does that mean for the leather? Well, for one, it means the leather needs to be very dark, right? To create an effect where the leather is has the same drop in value that the shadows do. And the skin also needs to have the same reduction in value that the sand does. Right? So right now, if the skin, the toes, right, are brighter than the sand, either the cast shadow of the sand needs to come up to the same level of the toes, or the skin needs to be toned down. And I think we need to do a bit of both. Go a little bit of in both direction until they meet and they're both appropriately shadowed. This is the number one thing people get wrong with cast shadows, is not having their values match. Well, one trick to do if you're not comfortable just like being able to look at it and see the difference is to pull it into your, like take a picture of it and put it in black and white. And in black and white, if one of them clearly stands out above like too much, right? That means that something is off about it. You want to see it in black and white? Okay. There you go, in black and white. So now we can observe the difference in value, right? Does the value contrast between all the elements in the shadow start? Yes, you have less value contrast in the shadows. So what happens? Right, is the reason you get more contrast in the light is because you have shadows, right? So you're going to have greater contrast in the light. Things like all these little micro shadows that like all the granules of sand would create, the little deep shadows like in between the little tassels, right? Those are what creates definition. Shadows, light and shadows create contrast, create definition. So where you have areas of less light, right, like on the back, right, you have a smaller value range because you don't have as much light. You're going to lose definition. Cool. Makes sense. Can I say that again? Right. Okay. So I'm trying to explain it one more time. Right. So these folds, right? The reason these folds have a high level of contrast and definition is because they're shadows in an area of light, where when you come around to the back, you have the same folds, but you have less light to light the folds. So the shadow value on the folds is going to be the same as it is on the front, right? So this shadow here is going to be the same value as the shadow on the back, but the light value is not as high. Thus, you have less contrast and you have less definition. Exactly. And shadows, so like if you were to have a value scale of black to white, right? Saying that this is 0, this is 1, or this is 0, this is 10, right? On a 0 to 10 scale, your value scale, right? So this is 0. Maybe this is like a 3. This is a 5. And this is like an 8, right? 0, 3, 5, 8, 10. Okay. Maybe your shadows are actually like your shadows with ambient light might really be like a 3 or 4. And then you've got room to play with like the blacks for your occlusion shadows. Right? Because his shadows of his skin underneath are not nearly as black as like under here, right? You have to have room for those also. I don't really want to do that on camera now that I think about it. Paint those little tiny loops, armor ties, whatever you want to call them. Okay, so we fixed kind of the toes, got them closer to where I wanted them in terms of like value range being more similar to the color of the shaded sand. Now, I do have to get some definition on them just so they, you can see they're there. Oh, all right. Okay, let's work on the armor again some more. So here, Right, we got the rough sketch, but there's all kinds of little detail on the armor itself. I'm basically going to paint it as if it's not there. And then I will go in and add the detail at the end. I have not done the shield yet, no. So I'm not super concerned here about being like perfectly neat with some of these transitions, because I know that I have to place in all of the detail like afterwards, and all those edge highlights and everything are gonna really play around, like mess with some of the blending anyways. So I just need to get it close. And then the more reflective an object is, the sharper the transitions are going to be anyways. So I can get it pretty neat. And then what I'm going to do, I'm going to grab some of this, like we've been doing before. I'm going to glaze over top to restore some of that color. And the other thing this is going to do is kind of unify everything a little bit. And then I can come in and paint the black lines, say black lines, dark lines. Okay, something like that. Make sure I get these little rivets. You can see just how much of the blending work that I did just gets completely obscured by the line work, right? Okay. Now I need my glasses to paint tiny edge highlights. First thing I want to do before I go doing the bright one is just pick out and try and clean up around these rivets a little bit. Okay. Like so. It's important when you're doing this kind of work, these like really thin edge highlights and stuff, that you get like the consistency of your paint. You don't want it too watery because you don't want it to flow into the recesses, but you also don't want it too thick that you can't trace a straight line. So finding that like nice medium, I don't mean like paint medium, I mean like intermediate, where you can paint a nice straight line. and also it not like go flowing everywhere where you don't want it is really important. You want it to flow nicely off the brush, but not go spilling everywhere. Okay, you see all that little blending work did at the beginning, like none of that even shows up now once you start painting in all these little details and edge highlights and stuff. Hi, Nitro Gamer. How are you? Hi, Dolly. Ugh. See, if it's too wet, that can happen where it starts to want to act like a wash and flow into the recesses. We don't want that. So just have to go back, fix it, let that dry. Okay, now on this side, I'm going to grab a little bit of the yellow and the orange. I'll do the edge highlight on the bottom of this star, whatever. With the the ground orange. I can do the same on that edge, and then they kind of join together. And to add a little more effect, I'm going to actually paint the inside edge to get another little reflection in there. Like so. Now where they meet, I'll get a little of both. Mix the two. So you don't even really notice where it transitions from one to the other, right? I want my final, I want to find a little spark kind of right there. Yeah. Okay. Now I like to get some little dots and stuff on the edges and the corners. Just makes it look a little shinier. Right? So now, okay, nice and shiny. I can now compare it to the rest of the armor. I look at it and maybe it's a little too it's a little too bright in some spots. So just like I've done before, I can come back in. I'm going to zoom out just a touch. And glaze some color back onto it. No, that should make it feel a little more consistent. Yes. And if I want to get real fancy, I can flip it over. Check my paint. I can paint a little orange dot on the bottom of the rivets, or on some of them anyways. I would also like this line to be more orange. To play into the ground reflection. Yep, one shin guard, right? Okay, get my nice orange reflection on the outside. And then where it starts to curve up a little bit, I'll add more yellow. There we go. Easy. It just takes an extreme amount of precision and brush control. No problem. You guys got this. I believe in all of you. I'm going to ask a strange question. Have you ever done any other type of training for your painting? As in, some footballers will do ballet and say it does help their game. Is it similar with painting, some kind of cross training? That's trained. I mean, sketching. Like I used to do a lot of traditional art, right? So, training, 2D painting, right? Those will all help with understanding things like volumes, and so yeah, there's definitely overlap there. I don't know if there's like what all you could do to improve your steadiness and control with a brush. I think a lot of that comes down to practice. What? Did not mean it like what? Yeah, I mean, I understand the concept of like footballers doing ballet to help with their balance and stuff. I'm curious if there is any training exercises you could do to like help steady your hands. I you know who would be to ask is surgeons. I wonder what surgeons do to steady themselves. Or if it's just like a natural thing. Because my roommate jokes I could have been a surgeon. He's like, you could have been a surgeon and made a whole lot of money, but you chose to paint miniatures instead. Okay. I've never had anybody die on me, though, from doing a crappy edge highlight. See, One of my collectors is an orthopedic surgeon. Maybe I'll ask him. Hey, is there any like breathing exercises or anything you do to steady your hands? I'm not orthopedic, pediatric surgeon? There you go. Okay, that kneecap's looking pretty good. I'm gonna give a little flipperoo. And I think I need one more little bright highlight just in kind of the center of these, just in this top left spot. Right, just brighten that one little part up just a little bit. Okay. Very fancy, very shiny. I want that top edge to be just a little thicker, just to help see that line a little better, because it's very thin. The sculpt is extremely thin, right? But I can adjust that thickness with paint. Just to make it a little more clear where that edge is. Cool. Any questions about that stuff? Well, I'm not gonna quite finish him completely, like without the shield, but I'll do a little bit more detailing on the back and okay. Just more in general, is there different situations you would use Chimera the red and the Cartacci red? I have both, but I just kind of grabbed the red without thinking. Cartacci red is darker and has a little bit better coverage than the red does. So I would normally use like one for base. I would normally use the Cartacci for like a base coat and then switch to the other one. Cartacci red has like insane coverage. I gotta be honest, I don't even understand how Cartacci red covers so well. I don't know what. I'm sure it has the red in it. Well, I'm actually not sure. I think it has the red in it, but I could be wrong. I do not actually know the formula for others' signature blends. Pseudoline red is a little bit more orange than the red. Tuladine? I don't even know how to say it. But yeah, it's a touch more orange. Your Cartacci red is the shit. It's so good. So is Silver Gray. From his set, I don't like, what are the other ones? It's like Kiwi Brown. Samurai Green's pretty good. So let's see, which ones do I actually use from Danilo's set? So you've got Samurai Green, Cartacci Red, Silver Gray, and then it's like Golden Brown. And what, Kiwi something or rather? This one? Yeah, Kiwi Brown. And there's one more. What's the other one? He has a sixth. Oh, it's like Caucasian skin tone. I never use that one. I just mix my own skin tones. These are the three that I think are really good. These are meh. All right. I'm not entirely sure how he uses this one. I think he tends to use it as like a glaze for whites. For doing like uniforms. It's basically Japanese uniform, but it doesn't cover as well as Japanese uniform. And then this one is okay, I guess. I don't know. It's all right. There's quite similar colors in like Vallejo model color. That's not, leather brown is not quite right, but there's like bestial brown and some other ones or something that I tend to like a little better. But this color's super fantastic. I use it all the time. Cartacci Red's also really good. And Samurai Green's pretty good, but I don't tend to paint with that kind of teal, that like tealish green very much, so. And Caucasian skin, I never use. And it's nothing against his color. It's just I prefer to mix my own skin tones. Now the sunny skin tone from Mark is very nice. That one I will use. Because it's just a nice light skin tone, orangish kind of skin tone. Oh, let's see. This like this. This actually needs to be a bit more yellowish. I'll make sure I get that yellow tone, that yellow tonality in that reflection, right? Even though it's on the cold side, right? Warm side, cold side, it still faces the light. Same with some of this stuff down here. I'm just going to mark it so I know. Like this. All of these doodads. I'll come back and give them a wash, but I'm just trying to be aware they're there. So all of that little area is going to get a sunny reflection. And then where his cuirass. I think that's how you pronounce it. Cuirass. joins together. Get a little edge highlight on that. So remember, these like weird shapes are totally cool. And that's why I just kind of like, I know roughly where I want the reflection to be. And then I just kind of sort of just place it in, right? Because I'm cool with these like weird kind of jaggedy shapes to the metallic reflection. And then when I go to refine it, I can soften those out and I get some very interesting noise. So anywhere that's facing down, right? Like this black reflection doesn't make sense. It should be orange, so the orange should kind of go all the way to there. And then that. I can actually have this come all the way up like so and kind of join into this shape. You get that. Now I don't want it to look like back abs because it's a very flat shape. So I'm going to come over top of it and kind of just change the shape up a little bit to avoid that kind of weirdness. And then it will start to come into some of the back into this green light. Right, so you get that horizon line, or the that black horizon line shadow. I'm going to pull this up. I don't want that black to be too big. So get some of that reddish in there. Something like such. If I want, I can play around with a little pure red. Maybe it's like kind of reflecting his, whatever this thing is, his tunic. And I'll take some of the pure orange and lay that back on top. Tone that color down. Sasquatch. Hello. Welcome. Okay. Great. So, that's about where we're at. I think I'm going to call it there. For now. Next week, I'm going to paint this guy. from Mr. Torbjorn Barone doing his Kickstarter. So we'll paint him probably once. It'll probably be one session, and then back to Achilles and try and finish up Achilles. I might do just some of the work on Achilles, maybe not the sword, but I might just finish the gold and the leather straps because you guys have seen it at this point. I've done 2 episodes of painting gold, so I'll probably just finish the shin guard, that finishes back, and then paint the leather straps, and I'll do the sword and maybe the shield on stream. Though the shield is more of the same, so I don't even know if you guys are interested in watching the shield or not. Do you care? Do you care to watch me paint the shield? Let me know. Yeah. Do all models take this amount of time, or does metal on the model add to the time? No, not all models. Some models take a long time. It's really up to the amount of detail on the model, right? Like this model is I wouldn't say like crazy detailed, but the parts that have a high amount of little tiny details. Like his armor is pretty complex. His like, right? If this was a flat shape, I could have painted that in like 30 minutes. But because it's got like all this little filigree and stuff all over it, takes a lot longer. I mean, just look at like all the little dots and stuff on the armor. So certain things, yeah. Oh, Wendy's still awake. So certain things, take a little extra time.